Matthew 18:6. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck than to be drowned in the depths of the sea. When I recently heard the Pennsylvania Attorney General explain the sexual abuse of the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania this week, I felt like hanging a millstone around these priests' neck and throwing them to the depths of the sea after I bashed their face in a couple dozen times. But I've learned over the years not to make a video when I'm angry, or I'm going to have to delete the video. I've deleted a lot of videos in the past, especially on my other channel, Rob the Blue Collar Guy. That was my first channel, still up there. Instead, I prayed about it. I asked God to show me how to react to this as a Catholic. I mean, this is serious. I found some interesting facts I want to share with you guys that you're not hearing on the news. So this is a report by the U.S. Department of Education from 2017. Carol Shakeshaft, she's a Hofstra University scholar. She did an in-depth study, and this is how she started the report. I mean, she wrote it in like real language. If you think the Catholic Church has a sexual abuse problem, you're in for a big surprise. From 1950 to 2002, 10,667 people have made claims they were abused from Catholic priests or deacons. So that's like 52 years, 10,667 people have made claims. Then she goes on to say this: from 1991 to 2000, 9 years, 290,000 children in United States public schools have made claims of sexual abuse from school teachers. I'm a news nerd. I read every news article. I read liberal newspapers, conservative newspapers, supposedly down the middle mainstream newspapers, everything online now. But I read constantly to see what's going on. And I did not see this. I've never seen this report. I had to search for it. Okay? So I'm not minimizing what the Catholic priest did. I think the ones found guilty should get the most severe punishment allowable by law. I'm not holding punches. And they need to be held accountable. And the people that covered up need to be held accountable. But another thing the newspapers and this Attorney General aren't saying is we really haven't had a scandal since the 90s. I mean, this went from the scandal took place from 1940s to 1990s. Since then, the church has been one of the safest places for children. I'll tell you, I just teach catechism, and I had to have an extensive background check, fingerproofed. I'm not allowed to be alone in the classroom. I mean, there's always someone coming by checking in. I mean, they're serious about this. And I'm a married man with 5 children and 6 grandchildren. The Catholic Church isn't playing with this no more. Okay? But why is this Attorney General and the media making it look like so horrendous and actually omitting facts? I mean, it's horrendous. One child is abused. It's horrendous. It's demonic. It's satanic. Somehow these people were influenced by the devil himself. But you never hear about these 290,000 kids in 9 years at the public schools, because these public school teachers unions are allied with the mainstream media. They all have the same philosophy. They're all liberals. They love socialism. They love abortion. They're in favor of homosexual marriage. Then they hate the Catholic Church's stances on homosexual marriage. They hate the Catholic Church's stance on abortion. Okay? So they're constantly attacking the Catholic Church. And they were making it out to be worse than it was. The Attorney General, for example, knew that most of these were old cases, that half of these priests are dead. He knew this when he started his investigation. He knew the other half probably were past the statute of limitations. In fact, they're saying there's only two of these priests that are actually going to go to trial for this, that are alive and not past the statute of limitations or whatever. 2 out of 1,000, okay? That's number one. So why did this Attorney General do this? Because he's a liberal and he hates the Catholic Church, just like his predecessor, who's in jail. The Attorney General, who's his predecessor, is in jail for lying under oath. So his motive wasn't to help kids. His motive was to attack the Catholic Church for whatever reason. probably because he's a liberal Democrat who hates the Catholic Church. Okay? And why would the media leave out all these facts? Okay? Because the liberal media hates the Catholic Church as well. Now, the Catholic Church did its own investigation, very intensive investigation, and they found out this wasn't necessarily a pedophile problem, it was a homosexual problem. See, the Catholic Church for years allowed homosexuals, if they repented from homosexuality, if they took a vow of celibacy, and they were celibate 3 years prior to going to seminary, celibate during seminary, and then took a lifetime vow of celibacy, they would allow them to be priests. 2005, Pope John Paul said, maybe this isn't a good idea, but he left the discretion up to the bishops. He said, I strongly advise against allowing people that I just described becoming priests, but it's up to your discretion. Do it on a priest-by-priest basis. And most of the bishops, for whatever reason, would allow them if they seemed like they were honest. They took them at their word. Well, Pope Francis comes in 2016 and changes that. He says, even if they say all this, we cannot accept them. Boom, a ban on homosexual priests. If they admit they were ever homosexual or ever had a homosexual tendency, they cannot enter seminary. This is Pope Francis, 2016. And like 2-3 months ago, talking to a group of bishops in Italy, said, we need to take this sexual abuse seriously. If you see a seminarian who has the hint of femininity, you need to get rid of them. You can't even allow a hint of femininity into our seminaries anymore. This is Pope Francis. And it's like, wow, I thought if you listen to the liberal media, Pope Francis is a friend of gays. He's gonna allow gay marriage one day in the church and gay priests. And again, this is the narrative the liberal media wants you to have. They want you to believe what they believe. So they kind of, they take where they never report that. I mean, I had to search for that. You can search it and find what I just said is a fact. But when he says in private to a gay person, you're the way God made you, okay? They report that all over the news, okay? Like Pope's going to change the view of homosexuality in the Catholic Church. When in reality, first, all these reports of things he said that go against church teachings are always in private, number one. Number two, just like Rick Warren, evangelical megachurch pastor, said, Pope Francis is probably, no, he didn't say probably, he said Pope Francis is the best example of a Christian in our time. I agree with that. Public people that I've seen. I'm sure there's great Christians that we don't even know about. They're very humble. But Pope Francis is the perfect example of loving the sinner while hating the sin. And many Christians use that phrase, but many of us don't practice it. So when a Christian actually loves the sinner the way Christ loves them, but hates the sin the way Christ hates the sin, the world is confused. Liberals want to call him their guy, conservatives want to call him their guy, and he's not either one of our guys. He's Jesus's guy. He's following the example of Jesus like the rest of us should do. Okay? Now, my evangelical brothers, who I once was an evangelical, if you're anything like I was, you're going to use this abuse scandal to try and convert Catholics to evangelicalism. I did it all the time. Before you get too, before you get too proud or too excited, let me read you what Billy Graham, the late Billy Graham, his grandson, had to say. Now, Billy Graham's grandson, he's got a really hard last name. I wrote it down, his first name is Basil, he goes by the nickname Boz, and his last name is Tchividjian. He had a famous brother, Tullian Tchividjian, and Tullian was a great preacher, preached grace, better than anybody I did, but he fell. He had an affair, and he's out of the ministry totally. But that's not even to do with sexual abuse. It was two consenting adults who sinned. It had nothing to do with children, it was grown-ups. Two grown married people that should have known better, but they fell. Okay? But Basil, his brother, is a lawyer, an attorney for Liberty University, Jerry Falwell's university that he established. Very conservative, evangelical Christian. He's an attorney, and he's been investigating sexual abuse in the Protestant evangelical churches. And he says it's way worse than in the Catholic churches. He said, according to the top insurance providers, they actually have insurance for institutions. And by the way, the Catholic Church insurance rate is no higher than any other institution, whether it be a university, whether it be a sports team, or whether it be an evangelical church. The Catholic Church, their rates, and everything's based on risk assessments. So their rates aren't higher than anybody else's. But according to these top providers, Billy Graham's grandson said, last year, there were 260 reports of sexual child abuse amongst evangelical churches and only 205 in the Catholic Church. Okay, these are claims, and I missed the point going back. These are claims, and I need to go back. Those 1,000 priests, these were all claims. None of them were found guilty. That's another thing. And the news is reporting it as 1,000 priests abuse kids. Well, you say 1,000 priests are accused of abusing kids, and they're saying 1,000 priests abuse kids. That's just a point I wanted to make earlier on that I missed. But anyway, so out of these claims, 260 reported claims in the Protestant evangelical churches, only 205 in the Catholic churches. Way too much. All those pastors and priests, if these claims are true, need to get the harshest penalties available by law. You know, throw away the key. Tell the inmates we got a pedophile here. You know, let them figure it out. So, but Basil Tjidovin, Billy Graham's grandson, I cannot say that name for the life of me, said he thinks the amount is much higher because he says for some reason evangelicals don't report it as much as Catholics. He doesn't know why, but it seems his investigation showed him they don't report as much. And he gave an example. He said a Presbyterian minister friend of his said she went to a new church and she gave her first 6 sermons on sexual abuse. And during that time, 10 women came up to her and told her they've never told anybody. These were grown women that they were abused by their pastor in a different church. And all different churches, you know, over different time periods, and they were all different age ranges of women. But that's just one church, 10 women, who didn't report it. Okay? So this goes on everywhere, all right? So I'm calling my evangelical brothers to come home to the Catholic Church. If you were like me, you were baptized Catholic, and then when you got older, you thought you heard lies about the Catholic Church and how you were deceived, so you went to a Bible-only church, and if you were like me, you loved it, you know, Bible alone, faith alone, all that. But now with so much information out there, you could see that you fell for some lies. It's not hard to figure out history that the first century church was Catholic. The first century church was Catholic. Jesus told Peter, your name is Simon, I changed it to Peter, which means rock. And then he says, on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. So if you believe the Bible, you believe that gates of hell prevailed sometime through history and the Catholic Church went astray. But if you look at what the Catholic Church taught in the first century and what the Catholic Church teaches today, you will easily find it's the same church. What has changed is the Protestant church. Martin Luther used to believe the wine became the blood of Christ for real. He used to believe the Eucharist became the body of Christ. He used to believe what Peter said in 1 Peter, that baptism now saves us. Okay, and the waters of baptism had actual supernatural powers. And the modernists in the evangelical churches laugh at that, and they don't believe it. They don't think baptism has any power. They think the bread is just bread. You've come so far from the truth, it's not even funny anymore. You need to search what I'm telling you. A great book, Evangelical Exodus. There's an Exodus. I Exodus out. This is written by about 8 scholars who left Protestantism, and they give you biblical reasons why you need to come back home, okay? In addition to all that, Jesus prayed for unity. He said, Father, let them be one as me and you are one. Where's their unity when there's 32,000 evangelical churches? Come back to the one Catholic Church that has stayed consistent from the first century. 1.2 billion Catholics, consistent. Our teachings, consistent. Come back home. Come back home. And stop singing about the blood of Jesus and drink the blood of Jesus. That's what he wants for you. Read John 6, the whole chapter, and you will see that Jesus wants you to eat his flesh and drink his blood whenever we meet. It's the new Passover, my brothers. Now, my atheist friends watching this, I got something for you. You may have tuned in just out of curiosity to see what Catholics think about all this. You too need to come home to God. Just look around you at the beauty. Look at nature. You think this all just happened? According to your philosophy, we're just space dust that somehow miraculously became intelligent human beings. If that was true, this sexual abuse wouldn't even bother you. Why does it bother you? It bothers you because you were made in the image and likeness of God. You have morality, not because you were taught morality, but because you were made in the image of God. So you know there's a right and there's a wrong. And you might say, well, in different cultures, they have different right and wrongs. Well, yeah, tell me, in what culture do they praise a coward? Come on. There's other examples of that. And just look around you. Have you ever seen anything designed that didn't have a designer? If you see a house, you know it was built by a builder and there was an architect. You see a car, you know there was an engineer and there were manufacturers. And you're going to look at all this and the complexity of a human being and say it just happened, everything came from nothing. And then you have someone like Richard Dawkins will say, well, then who made God? Okay, William Lane Craig, I'm going to quote him here the best I can, a really smart guy. Look up William Lane Craig debating atheists. He shreds them. But William Lane Craig said this to that argument. Just because explanation X is the best explanation, you don't need an explanation for explanation X. Or to give you an illustration, if if someone discovers arrows, okay, an archaeologist discovers arrows and artifacts, it's a logical assumption that these are from a lost tribe. Just because he doesn't know who the tribe is, where the tribe came from, or anything about the tribe, it doesn't mean that that argument is wrong. I mean, because Richard Dawkins' argument could go on for infinity. So now you had an explanation for explanation X, but now you need an explanation for that explanation, and that explanation. He would destroy science. That's such a stupid argument. So Richard Dawkins' argument that there has to be an explanation for the best explanation is dumb. And the best explanation isn't that everything came from nothing. The best explanation that this intelligent design had an intelligent designer, and his name is God. And if you believe there's a God, then you're going to look around and say, well, there's so many religions. How do I know what's true? Well, the one religion that has the most historical evidence is Christianity. And the one church that can prove its lineage all the way back to Jesus is Catholicism. So you need to become a Catholic Christian. Study the evidence, follow the evidence, ask God to show you the truth. There's more evidence that Jesus Christ lived than any other ancient figure. This is a fact. There's not one historian, there's not one scholar that would deny that Jesus existed. There's not one scholar that would deny that Jesus was crucified for saying he was God. And just as much evidence as there is for that, there's as much evidence for the resurrection that proved he was God. But because it was a miracle, a lot of people can't accept that. And they say these people hallucinated that seen him afterwards. But even putting the resurrection aside, if Jesus got killed and crucified for saying he was God, he was a lunatic. Because he knew saying he was God, then he was going to get killed. Or he was a liar. So we know Jesus lived, we know he was a good man, but he had to be more than just a good man. Like C.S. Lewis says, either he was a liar, a lunatic, or Lord. And I submit to you, if you truly search for the truth, you'll come to find that Jesus Christ is God. And he loves you and he died for you. And you know what? Life is fast. My son just celebrated his 32nd birthday. It was like nothing. It was like yesterday he was born. That means in 32 years, I'm going to be 84 if I'm alive. Life is short, man. Life is short. You know, think about it. So what do you gain? All this world, you get rich and you get wealthy and you get everything you want and then you die. What kind of life is that? When I'm telling you, there are billions of believers around the world that can tell you following Christ is real. There's peace in your heart. There's joy in your heart. There's knowledge and knowing God. There's supernatural things happen in their lives that if they told you, you would think they were nuts. God is real and he loves you and he wants you to seek you. Knock and the door will be open. God bless. Bye.